Too little pressure, and an athlete, student, or performer feels unmotivated and sluggish, producing mediocre results. Too much pressure, and the same person chokes, overwhelmed by anxiety and unable to perform at their actual skill level. Somewhere in between lies a sweet spot of optimal arousal, a relationship first documented in 1908 that remains one of psychology's most practically useful and enduringly relevant findings about performance under pressure. The Yerkes-Dodson Law, originally documented by Robert Yerkes and John Dodson in 1908 through animal learning experiments, describes an inverted U-shaped relationship between physiological and psychological arousal level and task performance. Performance is relatively poor at very low arousal levels, when a person feels insufficiently activated, energized, or motivated to fully engage with a task. Improves as arousal increases toward a moderate, optimal level, and then declines again as arousal continues increasing beyond that optimal point into excessive anxiety, stress, or overstimulation that impairs functioning. A crucial refinement to the basic Yerkes-Dodson relationship is that the specific optimal level of arousal for peak performance depends substantially on task complexity and familiarity. Complex, unfamiliar, or cognitively demanding tasks requiring careful, deliberate reasoning and flexible attention show peak performance at comparatively lower arousal levels. Since excessive arousal narrows attentional focus and impairs the flexible, broad cognitive processing complex tasks require, while simple, well-practiced, or highly automatic tasks can tolerate and even benefit from considerably higher arousal levels before performance begins to decline. The mechanism explaining why task complexity moderates the optimal arousal level involves attentional narrowing, a well-documented physiological response to high arousal, in which the range and flexibility of attention that a person can effectively deploy becomes increasingly restricted and focused on a narrower range of cues as arousal rises. For simple, well-practiced tasks requiring focus on just one or a few relevant cues, this narrowing can actually enhance performance by filtering out irrelevant distractions. But for complex tasks requiring flexible attention across many simultaneously relevant cues and considerations, the same narrowing actively impairs necessary cognitive flexibility. Sports psychology research applying the Yerkes-Dodson law finds that optimal pre-competition arousal levels vary systematically based on the specific sport's cognitive and motor demands. Simple, powerful, gross motor movements like weightlifting or sprinting tend to benefit from higher arousal levels, while sports requiring fine motor precision and complex strategic decision-making, such as golf, putting, or archery, show peak performance at comparatively lower, calmer arousal levels, with individual athletes also showing meaningful differences in their personal optimal arousal zone based on trait anxiety and experience level. Research on test anxiety and academic performance similarly reflects the Yerkes-Dodson relationship, finding that students reporting moderate levels of test-related anxiety and arousal typically achieve better test performance than students reporting either very low anxiety, who may be insufficiently motivated to adequately prepare and engage during the exam, or very high anxiety, whose excessive worry consumes working memory resources that would otherwise be available for the cognitive demands of the test itself, directly informing test anxiety management interventions aimed at helping students find and maintain this moderate, optimal zone. Organizational psychology applies Yerkes-Dodson principles to workplace design, recognizing that insufficient deadline pressure or performance accountability can produce underwhelming motivation and output, while excessive pressure, unrealistic deadlines, or high-stakes performance evaluation can produce counterproductive stress that measurably impairs the complex cognitive work required in most modern knowledge economy jobs, guiding organizational recommendations toward calibrating workload, deadline structure, and performance pressure to each specific role's actual complexity, aiming for the moderate arousal zone associated with peak sustained performance. The Yerkes-Dodson law, over a century after its original discovery, remains a foundational and remarkably practical principle for understanding performance under pressure across athletics, academics, and the modern workplace. Its key refined insight, that the optimal arousal level itself depends on task complexity, explains why the exact same pressure that helps a sprinter can hurt a surgeon, and offers genuinely actionable guidance for managing arousal toward peak performance in any specific context.